Anyway, China says U.S. attack on Iran seriously violates international law. Here we have it, folks. As I told you, we have it right in front of us, okay? The most significant of talking points, the sternest of all. I'm telling you, China will show you what kind of strong condemnations they actually are capable of if Iran actually mines the Strait of Hormuz, okay? The only thing they give a fuck about is trade, international trade. Treats must flow. 1 billion treats. If I can't send a single fucking labubu to a Midwestern family, I will explode. Okay? You shall see what they actually think and how they actually feel if Iran ends up closing the Strait of Hormuz. The labubus must be free.
Condemned the bombing of nuclear facilities in Iran, saying it violates international law.
Why would they care about Iran, though? What do you mean? Iran is a part of this axis that is outside of the sphere of American influence, okay? Alongside Russia. It's like saying, why would they care about Russia? Iran also has a 25-year energy partnership with China.
Going to go to Katrina Yu in Beijing. Russia obviously has very close links with Iran. So does China, of course. Talk to us about the kind of reaction there to what's been happening.
Well, China has released a brief statement, but it was unequivocal. It has strongly condemned these attacks by the U.S. on Iranian nuclear facilities. It says that this is a violation of international law, of the UN Charter, that it only worsens the situation in the Middle East. It's called on all parties to return to dialogue, to push for a ceasefire, particularly Israel. And China says it stands ready to work with the international community toward finding a peaceful solution. Now, Beijing is watching this situation very closely because it's anxious for two reasons. The first is that it's a relatively close partner of Iran. It's called it a comprehensive strategic partner. It is its largest trading partner. It purchases about 15% of all its imported oil from Iran at quite a bargain price. And through this, it's provided an economic lifeline to the regime. So it's not in China's interest for this regime to fall. It doesn't want to lose its influence over Iran or weaken its influence overall in the Middle East. Now, the second reason that Beijing is watching this closely is because it's concerned about its energy security, especially if Iran chooses to close the Strait of Hormuz. Now,
you're off base on this one. No chance China's going to condemn Iran if they close the Strait of Hormuz. They didn't condemn Yemen when they blockaded Israel. Yeah, Yemen fucking allowed Chinese trade vessels to continue going through the Red Sea. They didn't actually close the Red Sea. It's not the same as the Strait of Hormuz. The Red Sea is ginormous. Also, the impact of closing the Strait of Hormuz is far, far, far more consequential than stopping commerce from going through the Red Sea. That definitely impacts trade. China did skip Israeli ports for that, yes. But the ones that didn't were allowed to pass through. And not only that, but also, once again, closing the Strait of Hormuz means energy crisis. It means massive inflation, skyrocketing oil prices. Anyway, China does have a lot of yes, China has the new railway to Iran. China has a lot of interest in Iran. That's why I think they should be taking a more stringent, a more protective and defensive stance here with Iran. Because part of the reason, or the major part of the reason why America wants to fucking dismantle Iran is because they want to pack up the region and start fighting against China directly. I agree just saying they won't condemn Iran. I think the reason why I don't think Iran can close the Strait of Hormuz without Chinese or Russian help, if not both. They can close it, but it will be a fairly short operation by the American Navy. There's a reason why there's so many fucking aircraft carriers in the region, and there's a reason why there's so many Navy vessels in the region. It's to protect the Strait of Hormuz. It's to ensure that oil vessels still continue flowing through easily, as 25% of all oil crossing through that 33-kilometer strait. Iran cannot consistently stop trade in and of Iran cannot consistently stop the vessels from passing through without receiving tremendous military action in retaliation from America and all the other Western partners. This is why this is why I say Chinese intervention is a necessity here, or at the very least, Russian intervention is a necessity here. Why I say this is because even Chinese presence in this process would offer more legitimacy to Iranian sovereignty and all Iranian military actions. It would cause America to recalculate how much aggression they can show towards Iran, because all of a sudden it turns into the same thing that happened with the Russian nationals sitting inside of nuclear facilities that are joint projects with Iran. Vladimir Putin came out and said, do not fucking touch the nuclear facilities where there are Russian nationals working inside, Russian civilian nuclear scientists working inside said nuclear facilities. And Israel did not bomb those facilities because Israel and America are way more afraid of nuclear armed states. They can't go to conflict with nuclear armed states. They can only engage in proxy battles with nuclear armed states. That's why I said yesterday's actions that America engaged in would not have happened if China literally was like, no, we have our people there. If China had sent, like, I don't know, envoys to Iran, or even if it was like symbolic, they just fucking sent a bunch of people, sent like a military. I mean, that is, of course, if Iran allowed that to happen too, there's that calculation as well. But if China was more actively involved in defending Iranian sovereignty, America would have to recalculate how much bombing they can actually do. Same with Israel, of course. By the way, my uncle messaged me and said we shouldn't get into war with the U.S. because they'll bomb our new infrastructure while American infrastructure is so shit, it's not even worth bombing. The spy ships could be helping. There's that. I read a report about Chinese satellites that Iran has been using, as a matter of fact, when they're bombing Israel as well. I forget what it was. There's like China has given some technology to Iran that Iran is using in their bombing campaigns. But I don't know if it's like, I don't know if that's, I don't know how I don't know how much they're helping. But my point is, nothing, it's not true. My point is they could be actively defending Iranian sovereignty. Also read that China might have given some laser tracking for air defenses. Is the U.S. demanding that China convince Iran? Yes. The U.S. is calling on China to prevent Iran from closing the Strait of Hormuz and disrupting global oil flows. This is how you know this is a real situation, by the way, because the United States would not have this conversation with respect to Russia's invasion of Ukraine or the continued annexation of Ukraine. But when it comes down to the actual moneymakers, because that is the nuclear option, all of a sudden they're like, actually, please pick up the phone call, Xi Jinping. Please don't let Iran do this. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio called on China to prevent Iran from blocking the Strait of Hormuz in retaliation for U.S. airstrikes. About 20% of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz. China is Iran's biggest oil customer and maintains friendly relations with the Islamic Republic. Satellite image of the Strait of Hormuz, a strategic maritime choke point with Iran situated at the top, with Qasem Island and the United Arab Emirates to the south. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Sunday called for China to prevent Iran from closing the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important trade routes for crude oil in the region. I encourage the Chinese government in Beijing to call them about that because they heavily depend on the Straits of Hormuz for their oil, which is also true. Rubio said in an interview on Fox News, China is Iran's most important oil customer and maintains friendly relations with the Islamic Republic. Iran's foreign minister warned earlier Sunday that the Islamic Republic reserves all options to defend its sovereignty after the U.S. bombed 3 key nuclear sites over the weekend. Iranian state-owned media, meanwhile, reported that Iran's parliament backed closing the Strait of Hormuz, citing a senior lawmaker. However, the final decision to close the strait lies with Iran's National Security Council, according to the report. An attempt to block the narrow waterway between Iran and Oman could have profound consequences for the global economy. Some 20 million barrels per day of crude oil or 20% of global consumption flowed through the strait in 2024, according to the Energy Information Administration. Oil prices could shoot above $100 per barrel if the strait is closed for a prolonged period, according to Goldman Sachs and consulting firm Rapidan Energy. Iran is the third largest oil producer in OPEC, pumping 3.3 million barrels per day. The Islamic Republic exports at least 1.6 million barrels per day, with nearly 80% sold to China. It would hurt other countries' economies a lot worse than ours, Rubio said. It would be, I think, a massive escalation that would merit a response, not by just us, but from others. Reading Chinese nationalist commentary about Israel-Iran war, there is a tremendous amount of invective towards Israel and the U.S., but concurrently a position that China should not become deeply involved in a conflict. The reasoning is twofold. While China purchases a significant minority of its oil from Iran, this does not rise to the... I read this already. I read this fucking 3 days ago. We saw this already. I thought this was new. This is what we are... This is what we're waiting for at the moment. Like, what the Iranian response is going to look like. Okay? What the Iranian response is going to look like. Will they mine the Strait of Hormuz? Will they shut it up? Will they shut it down? Will they blow up? Will they blow up American installations, American bases in the region? So far, there hasn't been a lot of momentum. So far, they've just been striking at Israel.
Not only does its imports of Iranian oil pass through there, so does its imports of oil from Saudi Arabia, which is Beijing's second largest provider of imported oil. And it also buys gas from Qatar and from the UAE, which also...
Iran is less trustworthy than the Taliban government for the CN Gov, which is crazy enough. Shouldn't treat China like a whale. Wait, you read that announcement on Beidou satellite? So you should know how many times Iran has sold out China. It's in the same article. Yes, Iran, again, I mean, Iran did this with India as well and Pakistan as well.
passes.
China is a whale, however, especially because Iran, whether, look, I'm sure they have better calculations. They care about, China cares more about its own ambitions than I ever could. So I'm sure they're making a calculation. I don't know exactly which calculation this is, but judging by what they've done so far, which is simply to write sternly worded letters, it feels like they're not. It feels like they're just letting the Islamic Republic get crippled over and over again
through this strait. Now, despite these very grave concerns from Beijing, we're unlikely to see Beijing make any material participation in this conflict beyond strong statements, beyond being active in the United Nations. And this is because generally China approaches any international conflict very cautiously. It doesn't have any formal allegiances. It has partnerships, but not any security allies. And it's very reluctant to enter any war without it being absolutely necessary for China to do so.
Katrina, thank you very much indeed. Katrina, you there in Beijing.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from...
We want to bring in now our Fox News senior strategic analyst.
Recent analysis from Arnaud could be hopium. JD Vance, Iran blocking Hormuz would be suicidal for its economy. Interesting coincidence. The Iran-China freight train line was inaugurated 3 weeks ago. And since 90% of Iranian oil exports go to China, the answer is no. Closing Hormuz is not suicidal for its economy. As the article says, with the rail line far away from American military presence, Iran can export oil and import goods from China with the ease of mind if the sea trade is disrupted. Yeah, they have ports beyond the Hormuz Strait as well, obviously, if they want to continue fucking selling oil. But that doesn't matter because, like, obviously nothing... This would be incredibly harmful for Iran as well, regardless, but it would be way more fucking significant for the rest of the world. I don't know about the railway being a steady flow of oil for China. He's undeterred. Mahmoud Khalil is protesting right outside the gates of Columbia University, and standing with him is none other than Manola de los Santos of the People's Forum.
You're supporting genocide! You're supporting genocide!
You're supporting!
Colombia, you want high!
Sick. They have to supply their economy outside of another somehow. This is what we're up against. I mean, yeah. I looked at this yesterday. It was crazy. Here.
We want to bring in.
Let's do a little bit of domestic propaganda, or specifically how they are selling the idea that we have to go to war with Iran because obviously there's you should be fearful of Iran. There's sleeper cells everywhere. Just as the same role as the